Hello, this is Roy. Welcome to Roy's Book Reviews. I decided to start off this week's episode with a little bit of music. This is Silk Jam by Louis Vuitton. I figured you've heard enough of me yakking by now if you've seen several of these videos, so you might want a little bit of musical accompaniment. But ultimately, I'm hoping that you're here to listen to my thoughts on books. So I'm going to get to it, turn the music off, turn my voice on louder, and tell you my views on two novels today. Two books by the author Neil Gaiman. The two books are The Ocean at the End of the Lane and American Gods. Now, I was a fan of Neil Gaiman before getting to these two novels. The first one I read was The Ocean at the End of the Lane. And I was a fan of his because I had read several of his children's books. I have a young daughter, not so young anymore. She's 13 going on 30 at the moment. But at the time, when she was a little girl and I read aloud to her each night children's stories, Neil Gaiman was a popular go-to. Amongst the stories I read to her are Blueberry Girl, Crazy Here, The Wolves in the Hall, and Fortunately the Milk. If you have a young child in your household, I recommend these and other Neil Gaiman children's books. Blueberry Girl is of particular fondness. It's really a poem, or you could also call it a prayer in poetic form. I buy this book whenever someone I know is welcoming a new baby girl into their family. I think it is the perfect gift. Every one with a young daughter should have this book. It's a beautiful, empowering poem about growing up from a beautiful young girl to a proud, powerful, wonderful woman. But I am not going to be discussing those books today. At some point in the future, since I have read many children's books due to being a dad, and I put together a couple of posts on my blog where I wrote brief reviews of some of my daughter's and mine and my wife's favorite children's books, many newer classics as well as ones that have been around since our childhoods or earlier. But today I'm going to be talking about two novels for grown folks by Neil Gaiman. About The Ocean at the End of the Lane, I wrote, "This is the first Neil Gaiman novel that I've read, though I already considered myself a fan due to a few of his children's books. And also the animated adaptation of Coraline, which is not quite something you would want a very young child to see, but once your kids are a little bit older than the toddler stage, I would say, definitely check out Coraline. It's a little bit of a creepy story that younger children might be frightened by or be fascinated by. My daughter was both upon first viewing. And this story, The Ocean at the End of the Lane, actually does share some qualities with Coraline. Like Coraline, The Ocean at the End of the Lane gives us two worlds, at minimum. The one we're all familiar with, and another terrifying one, in which anything goes. The invented world is vague and transient and omniscient and nearly omnipotent. There are some guidelines and boundaries it must adhere to, though. Otherwise, it would swallow this one whole. I think that's a proper translation of what goes on in this novel. It's kind of a tough book to synopsize. That's the best I can do. Gaiman does an excellent job of putting you into the main character's head, a young boy filled with terror and confusion as the fabric of his comfortable existence unravels. One child's pond is another child's ocean. But when it comes to books, I'm of the opinion that you've either written a fine one or you haven't. Neil Gaiman wrote an excellent one with the ocean at the end of the lane. The second Neil Gaiman novel I'd like to discuss is American Gods, which has a very intriguing premise. In it, the various gods who have been worshipped by mankind over the centuries are real. When belief of them is at its height, when they are being prayed to and sacrifices are regularly made in their honor, their powers are at peak. As the years pass into modern times and memories of the old gods fade, they become shadows of their former selves. New gods are continually created because there are always new things that men believe in and live for and sometimes kill for. Some of the modern gods may be the god of television, the god of the internet, the god of the cell phone, things that we cannot live without. But plenty of the old gods, usually masked as common people walking among us, are still around. If enough of them band together, perhaps the ancient gods can vanquish the newer ones in a war. A man named Shadow, which also happens to be the name of my dog, who toes the line between the world of man and gods, is enlisted in the cause to help the older gods out. There are many books I've greatly enjoyed that I no longer recall most of the details about. Something tells me that American Gods is one of those books that, for reasons I scarcely understand, will stick with me. It's one of the more interesting books I've ever read. It's been made into a miniseries on one of the cable networks. I have not had the opportunity to watch it yet, but I did have the opportunity to read the book. It was fantastic. I also greatly enjoyed the ocean at the end of the lane. I'm also a fan of Neil Gaiman's children's books. I am a budding children's book author myself. My wife is an illustrator, so the two of us are teaming up on a series of books to be coming your way sometime in the near future, hopefully relatively near. From attempting to write a children's book, I learned that they are a lot more complicated to put together as one might think. They are deceptively simple when you read one, but when you try to write it, and all of a sudden you realize, wait up, I need to constrain myself within the language that a child would easily understand, but I also don't want to constrain myself so much that I am not being entertaining. It is no easy feat. Neil Gaiman pulls it off beautifully, and when he writes for adults, he shows that he is a master craftsman as well, and I definitely will be reading more of his novels in the future. And now let's end this video with a little bit more music as I sign off from Roy's Book Review, episode number whatever this may be. Until I drop the next one, happy reading.